The storm arrived just after midnight, with rain softly tapping on the window panes tremble as the wind weaves through the trees, reminiscent of a breath held too long within. The Carter home lay in serene silence, the world enveloped in a tranquil slumber, until Katie stirred awake. Sophia rushed in, her heart racing, as she grasped her daughter's shaking form, who had suddenly shot up in bed. After weeks of silence, the voice finally pierced through the darkness. "He continues to observe me." She whispered. It wasn't merely the words, but the unwavering certainty in them, a tone so rooted in fear. Sophia felt a shiver run down her spine as she glanced at Katie, her hands trembling as she gently pushed the wet strands away from her daughter's face. "My dear, who's watching you?" Katie remained silent, her fingers instinctively reaching for the familiar. The weight of Rex's fur indicated that the German shepherd had already leapt onto the bed, placing himself between Katie and the window as if to protect her from the darkness outside. He emitted a soft whine of distress but recognition. An hour later, Sophia sat across from Agent Jack Monroe in the conference room at the Seattle field office. Her voice quivered, and her eyes felt weighted with a sense of dread and fatigue. Katie settled beside her, unusually composed, as she gripped Rex's leash tightly. With one hand holding a crayon and the other free, Monroe observed the little girl intently. With great care, the nightmares were familiar, yet this time she had found her voice and so much more. Significantly, she had sketched Katie and gently pushed the picture forward. The table bore crude lines and shadows, hastily sketched yet an unmistakable tall figure draped in a long coat, their face obscured by a mask. The type from Halloween, something more sinister, sleek, empty, incorrect. Monroe leaned closer. "You've encountered him." Before Katie offered the faintest of nods, Lisa Carter, the tech specialist, made her entrance with a tablet in hand. "Jack," she said, her tone clipped, "you need to observe this." They transitioned into the nearby operations room, where Lisa accessed an audio file in waveform format found within one of the encrypted folders, retrieved from the concealed hard drive located in Hale's warehouse. Up until this moment, the audio had been indecipherable, but Lisa had finally managed to unlock its secrets. The codec moments before Katie's nightmare, the voice that echoed wasn't Hale's, it wasn't Klein's. It was more chilling, twisted yet serene. "Incinerate the cargo, every last piece. Spare nothing." The girl was not meant to endure, Hall faltered. Klein weakened. "Reset the pattern." The stillness. Afterward, Lisa looked up, feeling something physical. "This isn't just trafficking. Operates with a level of coordinated military precision, utilizing logistics and a coded language. Don't view these kids as victims, Jack. They perceive themselves as assets." Jack leaned against the table. Gaze remained locked on the waveform, as though it held the promise of deeper insights about the masked figure before him. Issuing commands, Hale and Klein were merely instruments. Sophia's voice was scarcely heard. Behind them, a lingering thought crossed Jack's mind. Was he still out there? He glanced at Katie, who was lost in her own gaze. She gazes out the window, her expression a mystery, while Rex's head rests gently in her lap. "He never left," Jack said. "He's just waiting for us to catch up." He stepping into the hall. "I took a call regarding updates from Quantico about the facial reconstruction of the masked figure. A sketch created from Katie's description and the new voice data had activated an old flag in the database, an alias, an enigmatic presence with no identifiable name, yet a documented trail spanning 6 countries and 3 distinct locations. Unresolved cases of missing children, codenamed Ward." Jack's jaw tightened. "We have a situation." He returned to the room, meeting Lisa's gaze, as he pondered the necessity of his network. In the audio, she nodded affirmatively, a single line echoing like a mantra as I played it back through the decryption process twice to ensure she entered the phrase, "The chain must not break." Jack stared at the words, a chill running down his spine. "Then it's time. We broke it ourselves," Rex barked, his voice cutting through the air. With determination, the hunt commenced anew as the rain began to fall. Upon arriving at the fringes of Tacoma, they encountered a desolate expanse marked by corroded fences and partially crumbled warehouses that had not. After years without any legal activity, Jack Monroe emerged from the black SUV, his boots crunching against the gravel beneath him. Soaked by the drizzle, Rex leapt down with the practiced grace of a seasoned veteran. The dog's ears were alert, his eyes keen, nose quivering in the breeze as if he already sensed something was amiss. Lisa Carter stood at the back of the SUV. With swift movements, her fingers danced across the tablet, meticulously scanning the blueprints of the building. "This is it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The lease is held by a shell company connected to the same offshore account that made the payment. We're no longer pursuing phantoms, Jack." Monroe offered a brief nod, signaling the federal task force behind them to spread out as the old steel doors creaked in protest as they were compelled open, the sound reverberating through the vast, shadowy expanse. A heavy surge of humid air poured forth, tinged with mildew, oil, and an elusive essence, otherwise a chemical bitterness that adhered to the walls like a haunting memory. They stepped in cautiously, weapons at the ready. Footsteps echoed softly. It didn't seem deserted. Rex froze, his head snapping around, moving towards a corridor on the left. My body tensed as a low growl resonated deeply. In a hushed tone, controlled primal, Jack's voice barely reached the ears. "He senses something in the air," trailed Rex through the corridor. its concrete walls marked by water damage and the remnants of long-faded graffiti. The corridor concluded at a sturdy steel door equipped with a biometric scanner labeled Lisa. Jack whispered that she was already present, kneeling at the military-grade panel. Encryption, yet this variation feels familiar. Just give me a moment. As she focused on her task, Jack's gaze fixed intently. Wandered through the corridor. The walls seemed excessively solid, almost intentional. Not merely a place for keeping things. Something concealed awaited, accompanied by a gentle beep as the door softly clicked open, revealing what lay within. In a different realm, the chamber radiated with a soft blue luminescence, while lines of servers emitted a gentle hum. Against one wall, dozens of steel filing cabinets stood lined up on the opposite side, each one a silent sentinel of organization, marked with a date and a series of initials. Yet the focal point was the table in the center. A collection of neatly organized folders caught Jack's attention as he reached out to flip one over. Open photographs of children paperclipped to intake forms with birth dates and medical information. Family histories, data about Jesus. Jack exhaled. This goes beyond mere trafficking. It's cataloging, profiling. They were constructing dossiers. Lisa moved alongside. He meticulously scanned through the pages, each file adorned with tracking codes and shipment logs, some of which were, some marked with R and a date were crossed out. He turned another folder with the name. Made his pulse quicken. Katie Carter, and beneath hers Emma Sullivan, Noah Mitchell. Lisa's voice quivered. They weren't just random selections. They were deliberately chosen at that very moment. Rex emitted a brief bark, not an alarm, but rather with intent. Jack turned to catch sight of the dog, sniffing at the distant edge of the space, a modest barrier of corroded documents. Cabinets rattled as Rex pawed once, then twice, his nails scraping against the metal. Monroe approached cautiously, moved one cabinet aside and discovered a concealed door behind it. It swung open with a. The air was colder and tighter in a small, insulated room with 3 monitors, faintly blinked, revealing grainy black and white feeds from various angles. The forest trail, a coastal dock, and the dimly lit hallway of another basement. The cameras remained operational. As the broadcast unfolded, Lisa's eyes widened in surprise. They were still operational remotely. The streams of surveillance were directed to the place where she focused intently on the code, flickering at the bottom of the screens, encrypted yet traceable. It will require a bit of patience. As Jack took a step back, gazing at the blinking. Somewhere in the distance, someone continued to observe, to keep the momentum alive. Rex gazed intently at the third monitor, the one displaying the hallway where his body resided. His demeanor shifted, tension rising as his tail drooped, a low growl resonating from deep within his chest. Jack observed intently. At the end of the hallway, there was a faint mark, almost imperceptibly a crescent moon, carved into the walls. Plastered. Jack felt a cold weight settle in his gut. He muttered that he had seen it before, where Lisa inquired about the old intel during the Serpent's takedown a decade ago. That symbol indicated secure locations they utilized for temporary storage, individuals rather than items. The weight of it has settled in. This isn't over. Jack turned to Lisa, his voice clipped. Can you trace the? She nodded, indicating that if she could return to HQ then yes, but it's currently bouncing through 4 international relays are intentional. Monroe glanced back at the files, hundreds of them, children cataloged like inventory. Most noted a few missing, marking some with an X. Do we have any live names? He inquired of Lisa. Reviewed the latest log. 7 kids, 5 are still unaccounted for. There was a pause, a moment of silence, and then the resolve set in. We wouldn't allow another to disappear into the shadows. Rex let out a sharp bark. Once more, this isn't a caution but a nudge ahead. Action. Monroe cast a final glance at the blinking monitors situated somewhere beyond the motionless behind encrypted lines and steel doors. Children remained. The anticipation lingered as the figure concealed behind the mask continued to observe. The sea stirred with unease that morning, as gray clouds hung low over the horizon, shrouding the sea in a melancholic mist. The waves crashed against the side of the FBI tactical boat raced towards the isolated coordinates. A neglected dot of land floated off the Washington coast as Jack Monroe stood at the bow, rain pouring down, splattering his jacket, his jaw clenched beneath the brim of his cap, his fingers curled around the cold metal railing, eyes fixed on the approaching island like a man anticipating the brink of a tempest. Beside him, Rex crouched low, his fur drenched, yet his gaze remained sharp and alert as, although perceiving the impending peril before anyone else, the island was no longer present. More than 2 square miles dense with pine trees and bramble, its shoreline rugged. Like shattered remnants, concealed within its core rested the estate of Franklin Ward, a name that until 72 hours ago had signified nothing more than philanthropic gatherings and cheerful images in Forbes. Yet beneath the facade Monroe now understood was the beast they had been pursuing, the masked figure, the orchestrator of Hail of Clean. Everything flowed through Monroe's low voice. The radio team A encircle the eastern perimeter while Team B maintains their position until I give further instructions. He won't run unless he sees us. Rex let out a soft growl, his body tense, pressing against Monroe's leg. He realized as the infiltration was swift, almost imperceptible. Stealthily, the team advanced through the estate's outer wall, their boots soundlessly pressing against the damp ground. Amidst the undergrowth, the house loomed larger than Monroe had envisioned it. Not a home, but a Composite fortified glass, steel-enforced doors, observation towers. Concealed within the thicket, the ward had braced itself for an event, perhaps not intended for them, but nonetheless significant. Within the estate, an air of chill and purity lingered, infused with the sense of chlorine and cedar. It seemed devoid of the warmth that typically accompanies a childhood home. Yet the third floor remains unmistakably marked by its presence. Lisa Carter whispered through the calms as Monroe moved swiftly, sweeping the. On the second floor, it was Rex who came to a stop first. His ears perked up and his tail held straight. Monroe padded towards the closed door, his nose twitching violently as he followed, hand resting on his. With his heart pounding, he kicked the door open. The room beyond was narrow and bare, lifeless space devoid of color, featuring 3 CS firmly secured to the floor at the far end. Side huddled under a threadbare blanket sat Noah Mitchell. The boy was pale, his hollow cheeks framed his face, yet the moment his eyes locked with Monroe's, they sparkled with a fierce intensity. "Hope, Noah," Monroe said. With a steady breath, Rex lowered his weapon, moving first with deliberate slowness, as if he understood the weight of sudden actions. Movements could break the boy as he crossed the room and rested his head softly in Noah's lap. The boy remained still. He flinched as he touched the dog's ears with trembling fingers, tears streaming down his face. 2 other children were discovered in the neighboring room. Held girls no older than 9, one with scabbed wrists, the other clutched a grimy stuffed bear with such intensity her knuckles turned pale. They remained silent, yet when Rex settled beside, they leaned into his warmth without hesitation. "They're alive," Monroe said. Into the comms, his voice strained with feeling. "Repeat, they're alive." Suddenly, everything shifted as a tremor coursed through the floor, accompanied by the low hum of machinery hummed beneath their feet as he activated the underground system. Lisa remarked from the surveillance room. "A thermal scan of the tunnel indicates movement. Someone is approaching the tree line." Ward Monroe was already in motion with the team. "I cut him off at the West Ridge. I'm pursuing him." The rain was falling more heavily now. The forest was slick with mud and tangled roots, with Rex ahead of him, a dark blur, navigating the forest, propelled by an elemental force of instinct, recollection, and a quest for fairness. Monroe pursued, breathless and with a vision that was dimming. They discovered him at the brink of a ravine. Franklin Ward, clad in black, his face glistening with sweat, was older than Monroe anticipated, yet the gaze in his eyes held a timeless chill. "You're too late," he said, panting, as Monroe didn't calculate the inhumanity of the situation. He raised his weapon and stepped closer. "You had them locked in cages like animals." Ward tilted his head. "And yet you keep one on a leash," Rex growled, a deep, throaty sound that caused Ward's smile to waver. "They were merely numbers to you," Monroe remarked. "Just files on a hard drive. Do you recall their names at all?" "Names are fleeting," Ward murmured. "Cycles are eternal." He lunged, but his target was not Monroe. As the ravine came into view, Rex sprang into action, a whirlwind of fur and ferocity. The German Shepherd leading the charge. Shepherd lunged ahead, jaws gripping Ward's arm as they plummeted through the air. Monroe sprinted, crashing into the mud, grabbing Rex's harness just as the man struggled violently beneath them as the agents arrived mere seconds later, yanking Ward away. His feet bound as he fought and spat. "There will always be another me," he hissed, blood dripping from his lips. "You can't stop the cycle." And maybe that was indeed the case, but at this moment, the cycle had fractured, and the children were thriving. They took Franklin Ward into custody before the sun had completely risen in the sky. Over the harbor, storm clouds lingered like bruises, and the air was thick with the sharp, bitter scent of salt and diesel as he sat in the interrogation room, exuding confidence, back straight, hands resting neatly on the table, not a hint of perspiration on his brow, facing the cameras, presenting to the world, was the individual who established educational institutions in Haiti, financed children's hospitals, and delivered heartfelt TED Talks about benevolence and advancement. Yet beneath the facade of empathy lay the mastermind of something far more horrific, an intricate network of exploitation woven through charitable organizations and faceless entities concealed within the guise of benevolence. Intentions. Jack Monroe stood behind the two-way mirror, jaw clenched, observing Lisa Carter. Stood beside him, tablet in hand. Voice analysis confirms it. "It's him, Monroe." He didn't nod. He simply observed as Rex sat at his feet, his body tense, eyes fixed intently. Fixed on the glass, his ears quivered with each word the man uttered or left unspoken. Inside the room, Ward hardly blinked as Agent Patrick Reed commenced the questioning. "We know everything," Reed said, his voice low and deliberate. "Accounts beyond the shore, the serpents, the recordings, the files in the warehouse." Island Ward smiled gently. "You know what? I permitted you to." Reed's jaw clenched, yet he refrained from responding to the provocation. "You were involved in the trafficking of children. Franklin, you utilized your organization to conceal funds, relocate individuals, and obliterate documentation. You navigated the system so expertly that it required a therapy dog and a 5-year-old to reveal you." Leaned back, his voice steady, "And that's what captivates me. You had databases, satellites, millions in government funding, and yet it was the quiet of a young girl shattered as Reed's voice became steely, questioning why. The children's ward fell silent, as though the question demanded careful consideration. Because the world forgets them, he said at last, his voice soft and almost wistful. Runaways, foster kids, broken homes are often overlooked, and when they disappear, no one gazes for long, except you, as a dog growled. Outside the glass, Monroe's fingers clenched tightly. Lisa whispered, "He's not afraid." "No," Monroe responded. "He believes this isn't the conclusion." Inside, Ward glanced up at the camera. "Do you truly believe it ends with me? There will always be more. Yet another mask, yet another man equipped with resources and patience. Purpose read, your journey concludes here as the agents get ready to guide you." As the door swung open, Monroe entered quietly, with Rex trailing closely behind. Ward's expression shifted, not to fear or surprise, but to something more chilling. Figuring it out as though attempting to unravel the enigma beside Monroe, Ward remarked. With a subtle smile, the quiet observer Rex remained still, his gaze unwavering and devoid of any growl. Still yet taut, his body held a tension akin to a bowstring pulled to its limit. Eyes ignited with a force that transcended mere instinct. It was a recollection that lingered. A Ward leaning into the past, with lips slightly curled forward. "You recall me, don't you?" Monroe provided in a calm yet pointed tone. The command was given. Rex remained motionless, while Ward quietly chuckled to himself. He was underestimated, not merely a tool or a pet, but something greater. He turned to Monroe. "You ought to examine him's connection. The transmission of trauma, that's where the genuine future resides." "Be quiet," Monroe said, voice cutting through the air. Silent yet intense, the door creaked open once more, and soft footsteps echoed in. Hesitant yet resolute, Katie Carter faced the courtroom, despite the team's warnings. She had endured so much already. Yet it was Katie who had requested to confront the man behind the mask, to face him directly. She entered with a measured pace, her hand gently placed on Rex's back, her hair neatly tucked behind her ear. Her ears and cheeks were pale yet calm. When she halted, she avoided looking at Ward. She glanced at Rex, who met her gaze with an expression that suggested he was anticipating something. Ward let out a gentle chuckle. "The courageous little creature, you ventured forth to confront the beast." Katie finally turned her gaze towards him. For a brief instant, her demeanor wavered, a shadow of trepidation flickering in her gaze. She leaned down, clutching Rex's fur more firmly, and took a step forward. Rex adjusted his position, not lunging but rising. His posture conveyed a message to the room. If he had been there, he wouldn't have held back. Ward noticed it as well. "You've trained him." "Well," Ward whispered, "or maybe he trained you." Katie remained silent. She had no words. She reached up, placed a hand gently on Rex's chest, and shook him. The head number didn't resemble this. Monroe witnessed it, revealing not merely courage but something deeper. Intense dominance over a girl who possessed every justification to despise, to dread, to retaliate. Deciding to break the cycle not with aggression, but with presence and healing. Ward was lifted to his feet. With hands restrained, the agents guided him away, his final words resonating in the sterile atmosphere. In the hallway, the cycle continued unabated. Monroe knelt beside Katie, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just did," and Rex leaned into her side, tail swaying slowly, breathing calm. The visage concealed by the mask was at last unveiled, and the shadows, for the very first time, appeared. To retreat, it began with sunlight. For weeks, Seattle had been enveloped in gray rain clouds linger, refusing to budge, yet it is the morning following Franklin Ward's arrest. Light finally broke through the clouds, casting a warm hue over the city like a softly bestowed grace flowed tenderly over hospital windows, sheltering homes, and the front porch of the Carter home, a place where life had once lingered in quiet stillness. Katie Carter sat cross-legged on the front steps, the sleeves of her sweatshirt pulled over her hands. Her gaze was fixed on the lawn where Rex, her quiet companion, sprawled lazily on his, with her back paws in the air and her tail sweeping the grass in pure contentment. She let out a soft giggle. This time, a genuine hearty laugh echoed through the house, and Sophia Carter caught it, and froze in place, her hands trembling slightly as she set down the mug of tea. She glanced at Monroe, who remained seated at the kitchen table opposite her, his eyes still cautious despite all that had transpired. "Done," she laughed. Sophia whispered, as if saying it too loudly might make it vanish. It was the first time I heard her laugh like that, and she couldn't complete the sentence. Monroe offered her a faint smile. With a gentle smile, "She isn't merely healing, she's taking back her power." Sophia exhaled slowly, wiping away the remnants of her past. The corner of her eye. "I don't know how to express my gratitude." "There's no need for that." "Me," Monroe said. "Thank him." He gestured towards the window where Katie had. She inched closer to Rex, her fingers softly gliding through his thick fur, pausing momentarily. Occasionally, her lips brushed softly against the well-known scar on his flank. A whisper meant for no one else. "You found me when I couldn't call for help," she said softly. "You," was my voice. Rex blinked up at her, then turned onto his side, resting his head into her lap, and there on that small patch of grass, they lingered, no longer a girl who felt shattered and a dog who had been abandoned. Two spirits that found salvation together. At the FBI field office, a new display was being set up. The hallway was installed quietly, reserved for agents and staff, yet close to the center, where the wall of honor extended from one end to the other. A solitary framed photo was positioned beneath the Dedication to unspoken bravery. The image captured Rex, standing tall with watchful eyes. Captured just out of frame. It wasn't a staged moment. It had been snapped during one of the explores, the rugged, worn, and stunning in its unrefined reality. Beneath it, a plaque stated, Rex, the K9, a witness, a companion, a protector, a hero. Monroe stood a few paces back. With her arms crossed, Lisa Carter approached him, her expression gentle. You know, she said, that dog did more than half of the agents I've collaborated with, Monroe said with a faint smirk. He isn't concerned with bureaucracy, only intuition. Lisa tilted her head. He's remaining with them, the Carters. Monroe nodded. There's nowhere else he belongs. He paused, then added, Katie sleeps through the night now, and she converses. Lisa smiled. Good. They stood in silence a while longer. The hum of the construction persisted softly in the background, while the news buzzed all around. Wealthy individual incarcerated as the FBI dismantles a child trafficking operation, revealing a multitude of shocking details. Different shades of the same reality. The serpents lay stripped, the procedure complete. It was shut down but not erased. Do you think it's really over? Lisa asked, her voice laced with uncertainty. Monroe's jaw tightened, a sign of the tension brewing beneath the surface. Partially, not entirely. There's always an observer, someone anticipating. Lisa. He glanced at you, fear evident in his eyes as he shook his head. Number, he said, because now they know we're. Later that afternoon, Monroe strolled through a nearby park, his coat enveloping him in warmth. With hands tucked into his pockets, Rex trotted alongside him, the leash gently swaying in the breeze. Trailing loosely ahead, he caught sight of Katie once more, this time engaged in a game of tag. Another little girl, her laughter echoed off the trees. Monroe slowed, and Rex stopped too. His tail wagged excitedly as he caught sight of her. She turned, spotted them, and came sprinting. Rex, she squealed. Rex. She moved closer, meeting him halfway, and wrapped her arms around his neck, burying. She buried her face in his fur, then looked up at Monroe. Agent Jack, she said, her voice soft. Her voice was clear. Sure. Monroe raised an eyebrow. That's new. She let out another giggle. Mom asks, do you enjoy being enigmatic? He let out a laugh. Just on Thursdays. Katie settled cross-legged in the grass, with Rex curling up beside her as she reached out, resting her small hand gently on his head. Her smile softened. He's not just a dog, she said, her voice softer now. He's my voice, my hero. Monroe glanced at them. Yeah, he murmured. Mine too. Above them, the sun climbed higher. Gold dust danced upon the treetops, yet shadows lingered in the world, with unseen things lurking in the quiet. In this instant, illumination had come back, and Rex was observing. Thank you for experiencing this touching narrative. We trust it resonated with you as deeply as it did with us. If you appreciated Rex and his steadfast loyalty, be sure to tap that like button, share this remarkable story with others, and subscribe for more uplifting narratives. If you cherish the profound connection between a child and her guardian, express your affection for Rex by leaving a comment with one. Your encouragement enables us to keep creating more heartfelt narratives.